Hi, I'm Mike Steven, and this is Gear Up. Today we're going to talk about getting your kids geared up to go biking. First off, the first thing you need is a bike. So a lot of people don't know how to size a kid's bike or would like some help sizing a kid's bike. I'll give you a few tips. First off, kid's probably going to be on a bike for 2 years, maybe 3. That's the maximum. So if you buy the bike way too big, it just really inhibits the kid from riding well. So my recommendation is actually to go on the smaller side and just let the kid dominate the bike by the time it's on its last year of use. So in essence, don't buy a bike too big. It makes it hard on the kid to learn and progress in his riding. Whereas if you buy the bike a little bit too small, it's kind of like riding a BMX. These young kids aren't going out for 40K rides. They're doing smaller rides, so a smaller bike's going to be just fine. If you look at this chart that we have over here, we've got anywhere from like how you size a bike, a junior bike, is by the wheel size. So first off, you've kind of got like a 10-inch wheel, and this gives you a rough inseam. There's all sorts of calculators out there on the internet to show you what the inseam should be. Why the inseam's important is you want the kid to be able to stand over top of the bike. This right here is the top tube of the bicycle, and you want to have a little bit of clearance when you're standing over top of that. The next thing after that is basically going to be how the bike feels in terms of the reach of the bike. Make sure it's not too long. That can be adjusted a little bit by stem here. So the stem can be adjusted to make the bike a little bit shorter or longer reach. I find most of the bikes these days, they're set up pretty darn good. If you get the standover correct, it's going to have the correct length in the cockpit as well. When you're first starting out on bikes and you're just kind of starting your first two-wheeled experience, I highly recommend run bikes. Run bikes are the type of bikes that have no pedals or cranks. The kids just kind of Barney Rubble them. They run with their feet and then they glide. The basic deal with that is a kid will be faster on something like that than a tricycle or a bike with training wheels. They'll progress faster and they'll enjoy themselves a lot more on something like this. Because what naturally happens is the kids start by walking the bike. Next, they'll move into pushing off on the bike and trying to get some gliding going on. And then they'll get going so that they can glide for long periods of time, like down a hill. And what they're learning at this point in time is balance. Balance is the harder one to teach. And if you teach them on training wheels or a tricycle, unfortunately, it doesn't teach them any balance skills. All it teaches them to do is pedal, and the pedaling's quite hard with those little cranks and little pedals. So first bike, I totally recommend a strider bike or a run bike, whatever you want to call it, basically a bike without pedals. As you graduate up into the bigger and bigger sizes, as I spoke before about the wheel sizes, you've got your 10-inch wheels, your 12-inch wheels, 14-inch wheels, 16-inch wheels. Obviously, the bike frame grows as you go with that, right up to the point of a 26-inch wheel bike. 26-inch wheel bike used to be the standard mountain bike out there. Well, nowadays, adults are riding 27.5 or 29 bikes, and 26 is what we call the tweener bike. So that kid that's somewhere between being a kid and an adult. I think that goes over sizing the bikes fairly well. The next thing is, what should you bring on a bike ride to make it more comfortable and safe? My top items would be a helmet. So getting some sort of helmet so that if you do go down, your head's protected. There's a new technology out there called MIPS. MIPS is a really cool anti-concussion technology. It's this movable piece right in here. And what it does is it rotates on the top of your head so that your brain doesn't have to rotate as much when it gets impacted. So it kind of cushions the rotation that creates concussions. The other thing that's nice in the helmet is lots of breathability so that you can breathe on a hot day, and a head size adjuster so that you can just dial that helmet in perfectly to the size of the head. Helmets will come a lot of times in, like, say, a small, medium, and a large, extra large. And they'll also give like a centimeter measurement around the top of the head. So if you want to get in the right ballpark, you can actually measure the biggest part of the head around, and most of the helmet boxes will have X number of centimeters to X number of centimeters for size small, extra small. The next thing that I really like people to take out there with them is water. It's something that's overlooked often, especially on shorter rides, but if you're not hydrating, you probably won't feel great and you won't be at your best. So if you have a super small bike and can't use a water bottle carrier, there's hydration bags, something like this that you can wear. Even kids have them. There's adult ones, and happens to be a kid's one, so it's just a little bit shorter in the torso here. And it's just a backpack that has a water bladder in it. You just put the water, the tube into your mouth, take a drink. And the nice thing about that is, like I say, the kids on a hot day, they say that you should be drinking darn close to 1 liter per hour of strenuous workout. So whereas kids, they're not usually working out too strenuously, so you can back that down a little bit, but having some water is a very good idea. Having some snacks out there is also a good idea. Next, we're going to get into a little bit more of the protection side of things. I always say it's nicer to slide on a glove than it is your skin, because you slide on this material and it saves hand material. So one of the biggest reasons I wear gloves isn't for the padding on the grips, is for if I do go down, I'm protected as I slide on the ground. I'm not going to have those nasty scrapes on your hands that annoy you for weeks to come. So gloves are a nice piece of the equation. I use my cycling gloves, just so you know, for lots of other things. I use them for a light glove in the winter time, for touring, for all sorts of different things. So it doesn't have to be a glove just for nothing but biking. It can be a spring fall glove that if you're hiking or whatever and just need something to break the wind and keep your hand a little bit warm, you can use a cycling glove for stuff like that. The next piece of the puzzle is some form of armor. The two places that people will protect first on their body are the jointed areas. That's in your knees and in your elbows. Breaks on joints are much more difficult to recover from. Therefore, the padding companies have focused on those. So the two most common places to hit the ground and that we can protect quite well with padding are your elbows and your knees. Usually people, if they're kind of slowly getting into it, they'll buy knee pads first, because that's the biggest chance of going down on, then elbows next. Obviously the helmet comes first and foremost. Next we'll go over just a few things that are going on kids' bikes. Kids' bikes these days are getting pretty cool. You've got, this bike is running plus tires. If you look at it, there's no suspension on the bike, so it doesn't have a front fork or a rear shock. So something like this is really lightweight, easy for a kid to pedal. And if you're not doing jumps and kind of aggressive trail riding, this bike's going to be actually lighter and more fun to ride than a very, very expensive kind of full suspension junior bike. They definitely make those up to very obnoxious prices. But for the most part, if you're getting out there doing a bit of trail riding, something like this would be fantastic. Bikes are coming now with disc brakes, so those little hands can actually get on those brakes and brake the bike properly. The other neat thing that's happening is coaster brakes. That's the type of brake when you pedal backwards. Those are starting to disappear from specialty shops, like bike specialty shops, because kids can use their hands quite good. If you look at them when they take your iPhone and work, they work their hands quite well. So getting them started on hand brakes at a very young age and a smaller size bike has become a lot more popular, because kids, you can modulate the brake a lot better. I always say this one to adults. Have you ever tried riding an aggressive trail with a coaster brake, the type that you pedal backwards? I can ride most trails and it's terrifying riding it on a coaster brake. So hand brakes have become more and more a part of the smaller bikes when they used to be coaster brakes or pedal back brakes. Other than that, like I mentioned before, man, you can choose your poison in terms of how much you want to spend and how often your family's riding. If you guys are Whistler folk and riding the mountain every day, it might be worth spending a lot of money on a bike. But you know what? There's a lot of bikes that are affordable in the $400 or $500 zone, where you can get into a solid bike that you'll enjoy and you'll have a lot of fun out there. If you have any other questions, pop into your local bike shop. I'm sure they're happy to help you out and guide you to the right things. And have fun and be safe out there. I'm Mike Stephen, and this has been an episode of Gear Up.